So with that, let me go ahead and ask Michael Porter and Mr. Paul Bulcke, the chairman of Nestle, to join me. As they're approaching the stage and coming up to sit down, I'll just mention that Paul has been with Nestle since 1979, holding leadership positions running many different geographies around the world, including Peru, Ecuador, Chile, and in Europe, Portugal, Czech Republic, and the Slovak Republic. And before ascending to becoming CEO, he was the head and executive vice president of North America. He's recently concluded 8 years as the chief executive officer of Nestle, overseeing the shared value strategy and the entire business strategy of a $100 billion organization. He has now just ascended into his chairmanship, which has just begun. And please join me in giving a very, very warm welcome to Paul Bulcke and Michael Porter.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for being here. This is a treasured opportunity to talk with you and for this group to meet you. And I think as all of you know, Nestle is the leading food and beverage company in the world. It's had a tremendously long, distinguished history, and it is the company, the single company that Mark and I would say was the catalyst for us to do this work. It was getting to know Nestle quite well and working inside the company and trying to understand some of the things they were doing and engaging in a dialogue with Paul and Peter Brabeck before him that actually was the genesis for the articles and the formalization of shared value thinking. And it was something where we were working in this direction, but Nestle was the prototypical company that was doing this. And we said for many years that, companies have been doing shared value for centuries. But what didn't exist was kind of a kind of rigorous body of thinking about what that means and how to do it. And Nestle was really the catalyst to, I think, to get us to where we are today. So we will always have a tremendous gratitude, all of us in the business community, to Nestle for this. So Paul, Nestle was the sort of quintessential productivity pioneer shared value company, at least in this modern era. How did that happen? Why did that happen? How did the company get on this path?
It happened naturally. We are a 150 years old company, and from the onset, and if you think it through, even we re-articulated our purpose last year. It is exactly what it was when it started. Nestle started 150 years ago with Mr. Henri Nestle inventing a product that saved the life of a child. It was the milk cereal that he made that we still have today. And ever since, Nestle has been all about nutrition. And we did it in such a way also that we were one of the companies that went international, multinational very early on. Switzerland is a very small country, so it's easy to go international. And we went into places like Latin America and India and Africa, etc. And we have been part of society there because connections were not there. So we had people going over there with their families, Swiss people and Europeans with their children, and going in God-forgotten places, building factories and milk districts, etc. To a certain extent, somewhere because of that history, because of that continuum of why are we there, we had something that was linked with, if you are somewhere, you have to link up with society in a positive way because your commitment to these countries and in very unstable conditions sometimes is for always. It's long-term. We were a long-term thinking company because you don't go to these places and build a factory and build districts for a few years. I mean, it gets a little bit harder. You leave, you stay. And that's also linked with Swiss mentality, a little bit stubborn. But
no,
there's long-term commitment towards our engagement with countries. So in a natural way, and we were going and creating shared value. We wanted to be connected positively with society and our activity. We wanted to be a successful company. first, because you can only do that over time if you are successful, creating shareholder value. But also you can always create shareholder value over time if you connect positively with society. But that was not formulated like that. And mind you, we have been a company that has been attacked from all angles. And I always say high trees catch more wind than we did. But how do we explain? How do we frame? How do we externalize and internalize the way we go about business? And then the idea came of, well, at the end of the day, economical activity, what you do as a company is creating shared value. And that's the difference a little bit about shared value initiative per se. We call it creating shared value, because that may induce in thinking you have value, how do you distribute it, how do you share it? Well, we purposely try to build in our strategy that creating of shared value. We go somewhere and see what does it mean to be here for society. We as a company, our purpose is linked with nutrition. That's what we have a passion for. That was our first product, and ever since it has been at the core of what we want to be as a company. Well, nutrition actually is in a fantastic stage in history too, to be meaningful to society. We can talk about that later, but we said also a company should define and build into its strategic thinking. It should build into its DNA. Every 340,000 people, Nestle should understand and should see how they fit into that, how they are fitting into being success, building success for the company, but also being positive, linking up with society. So that's, if you do it purposely and you do it explicitly, you have to define where do you cut with society more deeply. Every company has to define that for itself. We have said nutrition, because that's what we are, all about nutrition. We said also water, because our livelihood, water is life, but our products and our agriculture-based, water is so important, and we are operating in so many water-stressed areas that we're pretty much aware of that. And then also rural development, because we have so much factories close to. That's where we have a meaningful dimension of intersecting with society, and can that make that much more explicit. So that's why I said naturally, because if you see, it was an articulation of something that was intrinsic there, that we didn't frame, that we didn't actually connect with the world to. So it helped us a lot to build these bridges of connection.
Yeah. So let's take a concrete example of what shared value at Nestle looks like. Let's take the Nespresso business. Tell the group about what are the dimensions of the shared value activity in that area. That's been a fascinating example that we happen to be familiar with.
Well, first of all, shared value is, and Nespresso, that's always a nice product to talk about.
Yeah, we all like it.
But Nespresso, the first thing it does in shared value is give you the best cup of coffee. It's true, because you cannot say shared value is something you do then for, on top of doing business, that comes after. It should be in. You mentioned it before. You say it's not something that is on the margin of. It should be part of, intrinsic. And I think the best cup of coffee, and building and doing some R&D on this to see how can you do that, and then build a system, and then also make it available and consistency over time, and then go to the farmers and have a relationship with these farmers. That is built on a continuous relationship, long term, and then have agronomes going there and then share with these people the best practice to maintain the quality that we need, self-interested quality, because we want to give you the best cup of coffee, but work with these farmers in such a way that they can deliver that, with sharing plantlets, knowledge, farm husbandry, best practices, etc., building up long-term relationships, not only a price, pay him more because he does a better job, has higher quality, has better yield in a sustainable way. The AAA program is all into that. So and then go for origins and sophistication. And you have the coffee beans of Kenya and Guatemala, and they have all different flavors and build a value, but also together with these farmers and suppliers. Then have the best factories, the most efficient factories to produce that, et cetera, and then have a very efficient system also of other question, capsules. What do you do with the aluminium? Aluminium at the end of the day is the most recyclable metal you can have, but that's not known yet. We have to connect but to make sure people can bring their capsules back to us or put it in a system that is recyclable. These you see how we integrate. It starts with creating value that is business value, giving you the best cup of coffee, compete well in the marketplace so that we have a healthy, sustainable business there, but then have it more connected also upstream, downstream, so what you call clusters.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that shared value goes, it's not just the product. We all know there's three levels of shared value. One is the product. Best cup of coffee, what makes that coffee unique, it's the quality, it's the origin, it's the variety that you deliver that's unique. Then it's the value chain, and how you produce that, and that's been created to be sustainable, and then it's the environment in which you're operating, and that takes you down to the level of the farmers and the communities all over the world. And what you've been able to do is put all those things together, that all those things contribute to your uniqueness. The relationship with the coffee growers is part of your competitive advantage. Your recycling is part of your competitive advantage, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a wonderful story about how shared value is not just one thing. It stretches throughout virtually every dimension of a company. And that philosophy, if we construct it, can just reinforce itself. And so Nestle has been able to do that over and over and over again in a variety of businesses. How did you get this idea of shared value as it became articulated? I think what you said is it was kind of in the DNA. It was kind of natural to us. Because of our circumstances, we kind of got it. We were able to articulate it. How have you gotten this spread throughout the company so that all these many units in this gigantic company are pursuing this approach? How have you gotten the idea out there? How have you gotten the acceptance of the idea?
Well, you may remember 10 years ago, we actually started to think about the wording. And we said, let's see and test that in a region that I know very well, Latin America. Mm-hmm. And you helped us there to really say, well, how can we actually make that more visible? Creating a shared value, and so we tested that in zone Latin America. I started my career in Latin America, actually in Peru, the time when Shiny Pot was doing quite a few things there. But and again, we saw ways of formulating, making it clear, but then when we started to define it as something we're going to start to embrace, this phrasing, this articulation of how we go about our activities in society. We have actually built it into our, first of all, it was shared with the board. It's not something that just, it's an add-on. It's so fundamental. The whole company from the top was penetrated and supporting and backing this let's go for this. And then we have built it in our corporate business principles. We have been building it in our leadership and management principles, and so on and so on. And then there was all dissemination of that through training, and we have training courses internally, etc. We made that part of our culture, and has been quite explicit ever since we have been communicating. 4 or 5 years ago, we started also to communicate on our commitments to society on that phrase. It takes time. Look, it is fundamental because we are sitting here, we can discuss still shared value or creating shared value. It's philosophical, it's deep. You still have people saying, well, yeah, shared values, and there you go. So you have to discuss these things over and over and over again. But the fundamental, look, you spoke about the Pope, and I studied at the Catholic University of Leuven, and actually we had morale, the morale philosophy of economical activity. Was exactly that. It was creating shared value. Economical activity, philosophically speaking, is positive energy in society, because when you have a right purpose, Economic activity is linking up results with minimum inputs. So at the end of the day, you can try to formulate it, you can try to measure it from all angles and all that. I think it's a fundamental belief that's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit more fundamental than just trying. Is it a new way of capitalism? Well, it's a way of explaining what capitalism should be all about at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. I hate the word capitalism because it now smells only like financial. Mm-hmm. Capitalism, if you go back to what capitalism was resources in a free economy. Capital was more than financial. It was energy, it was talent, that's your human capital, and you go on. But no, capitalism is finance dominates everything, and there you go then. Then you need to add all these dimensions to compensate for a wrong interpretation. Yep. So I would not use capitalism anymore.
So there's been kind of a sustained effort in Nestle to get this idea kind of universally communicated and trained throughout the company. I've experienced that myself, in many different parts of the company around the world. And I think most would agree that anywhere in Nestle, this idea is understood and practiced to the extent possible. So how has Nestle been able to do this in these short-term oriented capital markets?
Mm-hmm. And it has been getting shorter and shorter lately.
It has.
But there's a fundamental tension between long-term, short-term. We always have been linked with agriculture. Agriculture actually induces a little bit long-term thinking. When you have a milk district and you have a little bit of a bad economical situation, you cannot shut down a cow. So it's intrinsic also with when you build factories in God-forgotten places, you don't shut the factory down. So that's intrinsic to what we have been doing. But now, long term is a luxury also of surviving the short term. So you cannot use the long term as an alibi and saying, look, I'm a long-term thinking company, so you're going to have to sit it out with me for 20 years until we get there. So somewhere you have to find this balance of earning your strategic thinking, earning your strategic direction, earning your purpose-driven company in the long term by delivering also short term. That's something that we fundamentally believe in. Now, what we see is we had a financial crisis, which was a value crisis. It's not a financial crisis. It was a crisis that we had in for me today mentality instead of us tomorrow. It was leveraging, it was depth, it was a short term. And we woke up and said, look, we have to start thinking long term, and now we see we forgot that already, and we're getting back to the short term. So what we do is combining this permanent balance between delivering, continuous, and but what we don't want to do is today something that would hurt what we convinced is the right thing to do over the medium long term. Mm-hmm. And you have to balance these things out. You spoke about the 3G phenomena and all that, but that's even more fundamental. I think that's another business model. Because you say 3G, is that only short term and forget? I don't know. I'm not going to judge that. But what they actually do is if you deliver a product A, you have to do it in such a way that you don't ask more than you should. So you do it the most efficient way. So what we do see in our business, in the food and beverage business industry, there's a little bit of a polarization of two businesses. It's, to make it simple, the cost down business, which has merits. Mm-hmm. Not going to judge that, or the value up. And it's clear that we at Nestle is value up. It's science-driven products with innovation, looking for new venues to develop these products in such a way that they answer the increasing needs of society, aging population with their specific new needs. How do we answer these? We see value creation there. And the other one is saying, no, we have to give basic products at the lowest price because we're the most efficient. So it's another model. So it's not a matter what do you do with this. it is another greater shared value model.
Yep. Yeah. Well, one of the things that we believe very, very strongly, and Mark and I have talked about for years, is that shared value is about strategy. It's about how you're going to compete. And it's not the only strategy. 3G has a strategy too, and they're really about, if you will, almost harvesting value by becoming more efficient and becoming more and pushing prices down and so forth. Nestle is got a very different strategy, which is about innovation and unique products and nutrition, and the Nespresso story is a very different story than other competitors, and that's what drives good competition, is everybody doesn't compete the same way. I think we've also said that shared value, and I think, Paul, you've really clearly covered this, shared value opens up new strategic options. It gives you new ways of thinking about needs, about how to do things in a way that could ultimately allow you to create that value in the long term. So let's put that in the context of kind of the latest chapter in the Nestle story, which is this kind of new, this new kind of view and thinking about nutrition. Okay, so nutrition has always, in a way, been what the food industry is all about. But the whole concept of what is nutrition and how does the food industry contribute to nutrition has changed. Could you talk a little bit about that, and how Nestle has reacted to that, and what opportunities you think that's going to create?
That is actually linked with the industry per se too. At the beginning, the industry was there also and started to allow people going from the farms into the cities, and the industrial revolution, etc., etc. The need for calories, and there's a clear relationship between our industry and society per se in these needs. And actually life expectancy went up because the quality of food and the calorie needs were fulfilled. But and actually that was a relationship until 20 years ago. Life expectancy and caloric intake was totally correlated until 20 years ago. Then too much calories started to reduce life expectancy. Hence all these things about obesity and you go on. But again, at the same time, with this life expectancy, aging population, the healthcare cost of society that is corrective, therapeutic healthcare, at the end of the day is correcting something. And you definitely need that, but you don't need that always if you have good eating habits or good food that is adapted to your personal needs and all that. Hence the Chinese saying the best medicine is food. But do we really understand how nutrients interact with the human body? The microbiome, the new frontier of medicine, microbiome is definitely linked with nutrients. Do we understand all that? First, you have then the need of society changing, and the science is developing so fast, giving answers to these needs. That's where we are investing heavily. So again, base products and moments of enjoyment and products that we always have known better, but yet at the same time now with the needs of society changing dramatically and the science allowing you to give some answers, we want to be there. And that's why we invest in Nestle Health Science, and that we have put up an institute that really goes after the newest of the newest, connecting with the world where the brains and the science and the interests are, and see how we develop products or services that are linking up with these specific needs. Let me give you an example, very simple. When somebody is going for surgery, you can actually give specific personalized diet to him so that he is increasing his immune system in such a way that you can reduce, and it's proven, 50% less post-surgical infections, for example. Or you can reduce his stay in hospital for recovery, despite the surgery or treatment, in 1 day. That is $1,000, only the bed is $1,000 less cost for the healthcare system, because you give him specific food that allows him to recover faster. You have things, milk metabolism. Kids, babies born. Some babies don't metabolize milk protein. and that stays in the body, it is poisonous afterwards. And somebody who is not diagnosed with that specific problem, and there's a nice photograph about a kid who was not diagnosed, totally handicapped, physically and mentally. And his sister, cute lady. We can have food that neutralizes these problems. You have to diagnose, but we can answer. These are all speak about creating shared value. If you see that picture, that motivates. So these are all the new dimensions we're exploring. Sugar, very simple things. Material science. Material science is developing dramatic answers. Sugar. We are looking into how can we allow you to have a certain sweetness that is light, but we do it with empty sugar crystals. So you have emptiness, but you have the flavor. Or salt that is not absorbed by the body. All these things is possible, all very natural, but all new. So there is a new frontier that is exciting. It offers potential of business opportunities because there is a uniqueness too. You offer something that is valued and at the same time solves some societal problems that we have today. Mm-hmm. These are the things we're exploring. That's the new frontier of nutrition. So we're pretty much also developing and adding value to our base portfolio, but at the same time exploring these new venues. And that is what motivates us. That's also something that we have re-articulated our purpose. Our purpose didn't change. I mentioned that the first product 10 to 50 years ago. The purpose of the company, we re-articulated that because we also felt that people speak differently. And the purpose of our company is formulated in enhancing quality of life and contributing to a healthier future. And actually, if you analyze that, creating shared values is put into our purpose. The reaction of our people, especially the younger generation inside our company on that re-articulated purpose that you explained has been enormously positive. The purpose is why do you wake up motivated in the morning to work for Nestle? And it's in there. And it doesn't take anything away of trying to be a successful business.
Yep. Well, we have just a few minutes left. There's just some great questions here. Let's talk about some of those. Let's take the third one there. A lot of Nestle examples focus on developing countries. How is Nestle trying to contribute in the advanced economy world?
It's true too. That's a weakness somewhere. When we speak about creating shared value, somewhere we speak then about milk districts in India, or what do you do in Africa. That's where you see it more. It's more explicit. It's more visible. But more than half of our factories is in the developed world. It's in Europe and North America and Japan, etc. Nutrition and the examples I gave here about how can we be part of helping to alleviate the healthcare cost and all that definitely is also in the developed world, although that is worldwide, but still. So we have to find ways to also explain creating shared value in the developed world more clearly. We try and we work on this is to see when you do an investment, a new factory in Europe, what is the social impact? How many jobs, how many this, how many that? So actually analyzing the value chain of your presence or your investment and try to see also the social, the not financial impacts that investment means over time. We're trying to build that in our investment proposals, which is sometimes very, very enriching to see and asking the right questions. There's still work to be done, and I know that you're working on these things too. How do you measure this? But sometimes we are living in a society that says if you don't measure it, you don't manage it. Well, sometimes you just have to say it is the right thing to do. So you cannot really measure it, but you know there is an impact, and will not wait until you can measure it to do it.
There's another question about sort of the inevitable issue of use of resources, and I don't know, these questions are moving around, so if the question people could not move them around, that would be helpful. But it's this first one that I would like to look at. So how does Nestle balance negative effects, e.g. Nespresso pod waste, with positive shared value creation, e.g. the Nespresso value chain? How do you manage those two things together? And you kind of answered that, but I want you to take that on head on.
It is an issue. You have packaging. The best way to deliver you the best aroma, to capture it, keep it in time, etc., is aluminium. So aluminium is de facto per se, when it is recycled, one of the best permanent recyclable metals. There is no degeneration of the metal. We know that. A little bit hard to convince you on this, but then you have to have a system to recapture these capsules. We have that, for example, in Switzerland, in France and all that, we capture something like 80–90% of the capsules there, because there is also this education of the consumer, bringing it back. We have in all Nespresso shops, you can always bring your capsules back, etc. I don't think in the United States we do have a lot of recovery of this, because there is also not the responsible, I would say, political leadership to do that. There's still a little bit of a gap there too, because of all players in society. But we're working with authorities, we're working with the responsibles to have more an integrated system. We cannot be the answer or organizer for everything, but we're inducing that quite heavily. So the awareness of the material per se is allowing this, and then organize and push over time to have also the physical organization to have that recovery. But be aware of it and not hiding. So also saying no and engage in being part of the solution. That's how we do things.
Yeah, that last phrase was very important. Could you just cover that again? You said, no hiding. What did you mean by that?
That you cannot hide behind your finger. You have an impact. When you do certain things, you have an impact. We use raw materials. We have waste in our factories, and we don't have wastewater treatment, for example, or whatever. We do that in our factories, but sometimes we do that collegially. So each reality has another answer to this. Mm-hmm. But you have to be aware of your impact on, and then do something about it, and then communicate. That's what we do now with our 42 commitments, communicate back into how are we doing on certain impacts that are intrinsically linked with our activity that may have a negative impact. How do you minimize your impact? Mm-hmm. Waste to landfill, for example. We have half of our factories already zero waste to landfill, mm-hmm. and work on these things. But we communicating more about these things too. Now, there's something too. High trees catch more wind, and we are quite a sizable company, and so we do catch some wind. It is engaging with society on discussing things. We have some people who have other angles on certain things in society and all that. What we do now every year, to start with, first of all, is communicating more explicitly about our objectives in certain areas. But what we do also is convenings, is talking. We do convenings with NGOs and people who are very critical. We do that once a year, internationally, and then also sometimes in certain areas, more specifically in certain parts of the world. And we do it once a year, and we go there. And it's very interesting to see. We engage in open dialogue. And at the beginning of the day, the first part is them criticizing you about child labor in cocoa, or palm oil, and you go on, and and we answer and say how we are engaged and being part of give a solution to this, or understanding the problem, or explaining the different angles to see things. And the interesting thing is that after a while, the different players in the room, and we have something like 60 people, they start criticizing each other. Because they say, you talk about this, but what I'm saying is much more priority than yours. And It's very interesting, very enriching. So there's a second phase. And the third phase is then that actually we play like moderator for harmony. Because reality is 360. You can see reality from an angle on one specific point, and that is very meaningful to a company like ours because that's a reference. So we take that very seriously because that's actually something that weighs a flag. It's very sharp and it is very relevant per se. The problem is, as a company, you have to combine different angles. And that's actually the richness of a job like ours. To combine these things, to have, you spoke about impacts that you have. Well, what do you do about that? The impact versus the benefit versus the cost of it, and balancing these things out. And I do believe also that companies, business leaders have to start speaking up again in society. I do believe also that we are in a defensive mode in the sense of, oh, I'm sorry, I'm a businessman, or, oh, I'm sorry, I'm working for a big company. There is indeed in our society a negative feeling against institutions, against establishment, against etc. And part of that bad feeling is generated by ourselves because we didn't always behave like we should, or we didn't explain, or we didn't engage, or we felt we didn't need to explain. Politics is the same thing, and many other things. What I do believe, though, is I'm proud to work for a company like Nestle, because I know what Nestle is. I'm proud to work for a company per se, a multinational. I started my career in difficult places, but that company was there. But the same values that we have in Switzerland were applied there. So we have a size, we can do something, we can move something, and so use that for good. Now, you don't have to say all of a sudden we forget business, we go all about that, because you can only do that if your business is healthy. You can only do that over time. But what we have to start doing is saying, now stop it now. Let's talk seriously about things, and let's also to politicians, because I feel politicians, if you speak about short-term thinkers, think about politics. Next election. So we have to start saying, hey guys, you have to take up your responsibility too. You cannot do and start imposing things on us just because you have an election coming, and it sounds well and modern to talk in these languages. We have to start engaging with them too and putting them in their place. You spoke about politics and business. I always say politics should give a framing, and civil society and industry and all that should do the painting. And the nicer we do the painting, the less framing you need. You know that when you go to the nicest paintings normally don't have framings. The problem is when politics starts to think they have to make the painting. And if we don't stand up and say, hey, we're going to be responsible and do what we have to do, they're going to invade our territory too much. And engaging with them also, framing society in general, I think we have a job to do too. So we have to speak up much more too. Creating shared value is a good way of framing our positive impact on society in the right dimension towards politics.
Well, we're out of time, Paul. That again is one thing I just hope that just keeps coming through over and over and over again as we go over these 2 days and have this discussion, and that is the central idea here is there is no inherent trade-off between social performance and economic performance. That if we think that there's a trade-off, then we're going into the rat hole. We're on a path that is going to divide society and business and undermine really the progress for all of us. I mean, the waste example or the Nespresso cup example is a great example. There's no inherent conflict between having waste, this juxtaposition of the fact that we use raw materials and we use water in our process. There's no inherent conflict between that and society, because what we've learned is that we can minimize and even eliminate that waste if we think differently about the efficient use of those resources. So what I think one of the biggest things we're fighting, and this is political as well, we're fighting this view that there's some kind of a trade-off between business success and business efficiency and business productivity and business innovation and actually societal progress. There is none. And in fact, business, if it rethinks its possibilities, can actually be a solution to many of the things that have traditionally been seen as conflicts and traditionally been seen as the role of other institutions. I think Nestle has been an extraordinary example of that, throughout the history of the company. And it's so fascinating. I see this over and over again. The companies that often end up being leaders in a given way sort of somehow had it in their DNA. It was kind of there. And when your very first product is saving the lives of babies, somehow very deeply embedded in Nestle was this idea that there's something about our products that it's not just a product to satisfy the customer and make them full or make them feel good. It's more than that. And I think so Nestle had this, in a way, the gift of being able to understand that very early. And then by going early in developing countries, they saw all the societal needs. They saw all the incredible deficits. And they were able to observe that and internalize that. And Nestle's top management often came from careers in the developing world. So this is a company that was, through its history, through its birthright, was able to appreciate and understand and innovate in these areas. And it became natural to them. I guess the challenge is for those of you that don't have that DNA, that haven't had the company grow in this context, that haven't had the opportunity to see and touch and feel the positive social impact you can have, that have been under attack and have gone into defensive mode, which is what Walmart did for many years, versus actually engage and think about how could we realign our thinking about these many issues. I think this is Nestle is a wonderful case study. There actually is a real Nestle case study now at HBS. We teach it in our shared value curriculum. It's available to all of you if you're interested. But Paul, I once again want to thank you personally and Nestle for your extraordinary impact on this entire field, on the genesis of this body of work that's tried to crystallize and make clear and build tools and concepts and frameworks for thinking about how to do this, and then for your leadership of a company that just lives this every day. And I hope you've all seen this is subtle, this is nuanced. It has to do with culture, it has to do with communication in your company, it has to do also with innovation and coming up with a lot of incredible new ideas. And now that's in nutrition science. But if we can make this work in more and more and more companies, I think ultimately we will win back the trust of society. We'll win back the recognition that actually business is probably the most powerful force for social good there is. So thank you for being here.
Thank you,
And
Michael.
I wish we had more time. Thanks for all the great questions.
Thank you. Well done, Michael.